city of Seoul pulsed with its frenetic energy. Among illuminated skyscrapers and bustling streets, one man stood out. Kang Junho, the powerful CEO of Kang Group, was known for his icy demeanor in business and his strictness with employees. Tall, imposing, with a gaze as sharp as a blade, he ruled his empire without distractions, at least until that day. On the 27th floor of the corporate building, Yoon Ha-ri balanced a stack of documents as she hurried down the hall. Working in the marketing department of one of the most influential companies in the country was no easy task, especially for someone like her, from a humble background. Her low heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing through the luxurious corridor. The pressure was constant, and any mistake could cost her the job. She had heard stories of other employees who had made minor slip-ups and were immediately dismissed. That was why she always remained cautious, striving to stay under the radar. As she turned the corner, everything happened too fast. In a brief moment of carelessness, Ha-ri collided with something, or rather, someone. Papers flew through the air, scattering across the building's polished floor. When she lifted her gaze, her heart froze. Standing before her was Kang Junho, the most feared man in the company. Time seemed to stop. The air grew heavy, and the eyes of passing employees locked onto the scene. "Are you all right?" His voice was deep, devoid of irritation. It was neutral, controlled, yet carried a presence that made anyone tremble. Terrified, Ha-ri quickly crouched down to gather the scattered documents. Her hands trembled, and her breathing was uneven. "I'm sorry, sir, I didn't see you." Her voice faltered slightly, and she feared that this would only aggravate him further. To her surprise, Junho bent down and picked up one of the sheets, handing it to her with an unreadable expression. He remained still for a moment, his dark eyes scrutinizing every detail. It was unusual for him to concern himself with something so trivial, yet there was something different about her, something he couldn't quite define. Ha-ri felt her heart pound. Was she about to be fired? Scolded? The stories about Junho's coldness were not exaggerated, and few dared to cross his path. However, instead of reprimanding her, he simply handed her the document and straightened up with effortless elegance, adjusting his impeccable suit. Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving behind an air of mystery. Ha-ri exhaled the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Relief washed over her, but it was soon replaced by an unsettling nervousness. What had just happened? Why hadn't he reacted with his usual coldness? But as she organized the papers, she failed to notice that from inside the elevator, Junho was still watching her, intrigued. Something within him had shifted in that instant, and he had no idea what it was. The following days felt different for Ha-ri. Every time she passed by the executive corridor, her heart raced, fearing an unexpected encounter with Kang Junho. But to her surprise, he seemed to ignore her completely. Had that incident been irrelevant to him? Or was he simply waiting for the right moment to confront her? Either way, she focused on her work and tried to avoid any unnecessary interaction with the CEO. However, on the other side of the equation, Junho couldn't ignore what had happened. Ha-ri's determined expression, her nervousness when apologizing, and above all, the way she quickly composed herself, revealed an uncommon inner strength. He didn't understand why it intrigued him so much. Accustomed to dealing with high society women always flawless and strategically elegant, he hadn't expected a simple employee to occupy his thoughts so involuntarily. The opportunity for another interaction came during a board meeting. Ha-ri was called in to present a marketing project, and though her voice was initially shaky, it soon steadied as she laid out her strategy. Junho observed in silence. The other directors regarded her with skeptical expressions, but he saw something different. She was talented, confident, even under pressure. When she finished her presentation, silence filled the room. Then Junho broke the tension. A bold strategy, but interesting. "I want this proposal refined and presented again in 3 days. Miss Yoon, do you think you can meet this deadline?" Ha-ri felt a chill run down her spine. Junho was speaking to her directly. Swallowing hard, she nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. I'll do my best." He held her gaze for a moment before turning to the other directors. "This meeting is adjourned." Ha-ri walked out of the room with trembling legs. She could hardly believe she had spoken to the CEO without stammering. But what confused her even more was the expression on Junho's face. Was he testing her abilities, or was he simply curious about her? What she didn't know was that, for him, this interaction wouldn't be the last. On the contrary, it was only the beginning of something that would change their lives forever. Ri's 3 sleepless nights had been worth it. On the day of her revised presentation, she commanded the boardroom with her confidence and impeccable preparation. The directors, who had once underestimated her, exchanged impressed glances, but nothing affected her more than Kang Junho's expression. For the first time, he gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile as he listened to her words, a rare sight, but one that made her heart race. After the meeting, Ri didn't expect to see him again so soon. However, at the end of the workday, as she stepped into an empty elevator, the doors closed before she could step back out. Then, a presence beside her made her hold her breath. Junho was there. The silence between them was thick. She tried to keep her eyes fixed on the panel, but she could feel his piercing gaze on her. Then suddenly, he spoke. "Your work was impressive." Ri blinked, surprised. The powerful CEO of Kang Group was complimenting her. "Thursday, thank you, sir." He crossed his arms and looked at the floor number display. "Call me Junho when we're outside the workplace." Ri swallowed hard. What did that mean? But before she could ask, the elevator gave a sudden jolt. The lights flickered, and the entire building seemed to tremble. The elevator stopped. A moment of panic set in, but Junho remained calm. He picked up the emergency phone to call for assistance, but there was no signal. Ri took a deep breath, feeling her chest tighten. Claustrophobia was creeping in. He noticed her nervousness and, in a surprisingly gentle tone, spoke. "Breathe deeply. Look at me." She obeyed, meeting his eyes. For a moment, the world seemed to slow down. It was just the two of them in that confined space. The air between them became dense. The slight tremble in her hands did not go unnoticed by Junho, who hesitated before continuing. "There's no need to be afraid. They'll fix it soon." Ri nodded, but her heartbeat was erratic, and not just because of the stalled elevator. There was something about being trapped there with him that made her even more nervous. The tight space amplified every movement, every breath. "Do you always work this hard?" His voice broke the silence. Ri blinked, caught off guard by the question. I always try to do my best. My work is important to me." He nodded slowly, as if processing her answer. A thought crossed his mind how many people in his company were there just for the status, and how many, like Ri, truly gave their all because they loved what they did. After what felt like an eternity, the lights flickered again, and the elevator started moving. Ri let out a relieved breath. When the doors opened, she took a quick step forward, eager to escape the overwhelming moment. But before she could disappear down the hallway, Junho called her name. "Ri." She turned, surprised. He looked at her for a brief moment, as if he wanted to say something more, but instead he simply gave a small nod. "Good night." She blinked, stunned. Kang Junho, the man who rarely spoke to employees, had just wished her a good night. That night, as she lay in bed trying to sleep, one thing was certain: something between them had changed, and the danger of that was far greater than she had imagined. The CEO of the company was showing interest in her. But why? And how far would this go? In the days following the elevator incident, Ri tried to ignore the strange shift in dynamics between her and Junho. But what once seemed like an isolated encounter became a recurring pattern. The CEO, once untouchable and distant, now watched her in the hallways, sought her opinion in meetings, and even flashed a discreet smile when their paths crossed. This did not go unnoticed by the other employees. Whispers and curious glances began to surround her, but nothing could have prepared her for the blow that was about to come. That afternoon, Ri was summoned to a board meeting. Her heart pounded when she realized that, in addition to the directors, Kang Ji-hoon, Junho's father and chairman of the board, was also present. The air was heavy as she stepped into the room, feeling small under the weight of their stern gazes. She struggled to maintain a professional posture, but the atmosphere inside was crushing. Junho had not yet arrived, and she could sense that this meeting was a trap. Ji-hoon stood up from his chair, interlacing his fingers on the table, his gaze sharp and judicial. "Miss Yoon," his voice was as cold as ice. "Can you explain why you have been attracting so much of my son's attention?" She froze. The words refused to come out. I don't know what you mean, sir." Her voice was weaker than she had intended. "Don't be naive. There are rumors all over the company. Employees are talking about how Kang Junho has been giving you unusual attention, and we cannot allow such distractions." The directors nodded in agreement, some throwing disdainful looks her way. Harai felt her blood turn cold. Working at this company had been her biggest dream, but she also knew she was being used as a scapegoat. Before she could respond, the door swung open forcefully, and Junho stepped into the room, his expression dark. "Father, what is going on here?" Ji-hoon met his gaze with icy composure. "We are handling a problem before it gets out of control." Junho clenched his fists. He knew exactly what this meant. The company and his family expected him to choose the legacy he had built or the feelings he didn't even fully understand for Hari. "This is ridiculous," he growled, crossing his arms. "Hari is a competent employee. You're judging her without reason." Ji-hoon let out a dry laugh. "Don't underestimate the intelligence of the people in this room, Junho. We all know this goes beyond professionalism. Either you put an end to this now, or your position as the successor of Kang Group will be reconsidered." The tension thickened. Hari looked at Junho, feeling the weight of his decision. Would he protect her, or would he choose the company? She didn't want to be the reason for his downfall. Taking a deep breath, she made the decision for him. "I resign." The room fell into absolute silence. June, Ho's eyes widened in shock. "What? I don't want to be a problem. If my presence is a disruption, then I'll leave." She bowed respectfully, even as her chest tightened. As she turned to go, Junho grabbed her wrist. "Umber, I won't let you do this." Their eyes met, and in that moment, she knew Junho was ready to fight for her. But that would mean going against not just his family, but the entire business elite, who expected him to obey without question. The silence between them was deafening. The tension was palpable. And in that moment, Hari realized that if he chose to stand by her side, the price would be too high. Could their love survive an empire built on unbreakable rules? Hari disappeared from the company the next day. No one knew where she had gone, and even as Junho tried to maintain his composure, he felt an inexplicable emptiness. He attempted to contact her, but her number had been deactivated. For days, he searched for her while enduring the relentless pressure from his father and the board of directors. The message was clear. Either he accepted the company's rules and followed the path set for him, or his position as heir would be at risk. But none of that mattered. He couldn't simply forget her. After weeks of searching, Junho finally found Hari in a small coastal town, working at a modest cafe. The wooden floor creaked under his steps as he entered. The rich scent of freshly brewed coffee, mixed with the salty breeze drifting through the open windows. Hari was behind the counter, serving a cup of tea to a customer. When she looked up and saw Junho standing there, her fingers faltered for an instant over the porcelain cup. "How did you find me?" Her voice was barely a whisper. He stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I never stopped looking." Her heart clenched. The man standing before her was not just the powerful CEO of Kang Group, was someone who had chosen to defy everything for her. But fear still lingered inside her. "Junho, do you know what this means? If you keep looking for me, you could lose everything." He smirked slightly, his eyes shining with determination. "Then let me lose it. What's the point of having an empire if I can't choose who I want by my side?" Tears welled in Hai's eyes, but she couldn't let herself falter. Before she could respond, he took her hands firmly in his. "Come back with me. We'll face this together." She hesitated, glancing around. In this small town, far from Seoul, she had found a sense of peace. But deep down, she knew that running away wasn't the answer. Not if she truly wanted to change her fate. "What if I say I'm scared?" Her voice was so quiet, it almost got lost in the sound of the distant waves. Junho sighed and reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a crumpled envelope. He handed it to her. "This arrived on my desk the day after you left. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope and found an anonymous letter. The printed words were direct and cruel. If you stay near him, they will destroy your career, your family, your life. People like you don't belong in his world. Hari swallowed hard, a chill running down her spine. She knew Junho's family was powerful, but she hadn't expected them to threaten her so directly. Now do you understand why I couldn't leave you alone? He asked. Running won't stop them. If we're going to fight, let's do it together. She looked at him and saw something she had never seen before. Vulnerability. Junho, the man who always seemed unshakable, was exposing himself completely to her. And Hari realized she wasn't the only one who was afraid. He was afraid of losing her, too. That night, beneath a sky full of stars, Junho and Hari made the decision that would change their lives forever. They would return to Seoul, ready to challenge everything and everyone in the name of love. But deep down, Hari knew that this decision wasn't the end of the battle. It was only the beginning. Returning to Seoul was anything but smooth. As soon as Junho and Hari arrived back in the city, the weight of society, the company, and the Kang family crashed down on them. The media was quick to uncover their relationship, plastering sensationalist headlines everywhere. Billionaire CEO in love with an employee, romance or rebellion? Inside the company, directors whispered. The Kang family remained unyielding, and Kang Ji-hoon, the patriarch, threatened to cut Junho from the corporate lineage if he insisted on his relationship with Hari. But Junho did not back down. In front of a shareholder assembly, he delivered a decisive speech. I've spent my entire life being molded into the perfect successor, but I've realized that a true leader does not bow to fear or irrational expectations. If my position depends on abandoning the woman I love, then I don't deserve this position. The room fell silent. Ji-hoon studied his son for a long moment before finally speaking. Are you willing to lose everything for her? Junho took Hari's hand. I'm not losing anything. I'm gaining everything. The shock was immediate, but to the surprise of many, some shareholders began to support Junho. Gradually, the opposition crumbled. Even though Ji-hoon was displeased, he came to understand that his son was ready to be a true lidera man who chose love without fearing the consequences. For weeks, tension still lingered. Hari endured public scrutiny, disdainful glances from high society, and cruelly speculative headlines. But over time, the storm settled. She was no longer just the employee who seduced the CEO. She was a strong woman who proved to everyone that her place beside Junho was not a weakness, but a choice. A month later, under the soft glow of paper lanterns and surrounded by friends and allies, Junho and Hari were married in a romantic ceremony. The Kang Empire did not crumble. Instead, it grew stronger under a new kind of leadership that finally understood the true value of love and courage. During the wedding, Ji-hoon watched from a distance, his expression unreadable. But at the end of the celebration, he approached the couple and, in a rare moment of humanity, placed a firm hand on his son's shoulder. I hope you know what you're doing, Junho. His tone was neither approval nor condemnation. It was silent acknowledgement. Junho simply smiled. I do, Father. For the first time, I know exactly what I'm doing. The years passed. Under Junho's leadership, Kang Group thrived, evolving into a more modern and inclusive company. Hari, in turn, pursued her career, and through her own merit, became the company's marketing director. On a golden afternoon, Junho and Hari walked through the garden of their home, watching their young son run through the flowers. His laughter echoed in the air, and Hari squeezed her husband's hand, feeling an immense peace. I still can't believe all of this happened, she whispered, watching their child play. Junho pulled her closer, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. And I never doubted that we would be together, because some things are worth any fight. They gazed into each other's eyes, and beneath the starry Seoul sky, Hari knew she had chosen the right love. And this time, without fear, she understood that this wasn't a fairy tale, it was the reality they had built together.